I am so excited about our next award. The recipient of today's first President's Medal of Excellence is a very special alumna and supporter of TC, Phyllis L. Kossoff. Remember what I said about time, talent, and treasure? Phyllis gives generously of all these for one main reason: to help TC students make a world of difference as educators and leaders. Our students could hardly have a better role model. A teacher in New York City schools by the age of 20, Phyllis later earned her TC Master's in Health and Physical Education and taught junior high girls in East Harlem. But after her daughter Stephanie was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, Phyllis changed her life course. Supported at every turn by her late husband Burton, she dedicated herself to raising awareness of cystic fibrosis and advocating for research and treatments when little was known about the disease. Phyllis laid the groundwork for the creation of the National Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and founded and served as president of the New York chapter. Phyllis's enormously successful advocacy work involved a complex interplay of education, research, and policy. So she decided that her next mission in life was to arm future generations of leaders with the skills she had come to master. She returned to TC as a member of the Alumni Council and then the President's Advisory Council, where her guidance has been invaluable. She established and still supports the Phyllis and Burton Kossoff Scholarship Fund, which has supported students in the Department of Human Development for nearly a decade and a half. Best of all, for me, because I'm a policy person, Phyllis has established TC as the premier address for the national conversation on education policy. Through the Phyllis L. Kossoff Lecture on Education and Policy, the college has hosted important national, state, and local public figures in education. Speakers have included the U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, New York State Education Commissioners Merryl and David Steiner, New York State Board of Regents Chancellor and TC alumna Merryl Tisch, and New York City Schools Chancellors Dennis Walcott and Carmen Fariña. For the last 3 presidential elections, the Kossoff Lecture offered voters invaluable insider opportunities, live debates between the nominees' education advisors in 2008 and 2012, and a conversation with a senior policy advisor to Hillary Clinton last October. Phyllis is a force in New York City and part of the fabric of TC. You won't find a more dedicated alumna, a fiercer supporter of students, or, I'm honored to say, a dearer friend. She has said, "I've come to believe that there is far more goodness in the world than selfishness and greed. Given the chance, most people want to do good. Thank you, Phyllis, for doing more than your fair share. To help me present Phyllis with the President's Medal, please welcome our Arthur I. Gates Professor of Sociology and Education and Chair of our Department of Education Policy and Social Analysis, Aaron Pallas.
So I get to read the citation. Phyllis L. Kossoff, our time demands enlightened citizens who strive for a more humane and just society. You have modeled that role and furthered citizenship education for all. At age 20, you became a teacher, inspired by a mother who told you, no is just the beginning of a conversation. Tomorrow is too late, and what needs to be done can be done. Yet adversity was also your tutor. When your beloved daughter Stephanie was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, you raised awareness about a disease barely mentioned in medical textbooks. Supported by your husband, Burton, you helped lay the groundwork for the National Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. At 19, Stephanie lost her fight. But today, through the foundation's efforts, the median lifespan with CF is over 40. New medicines reduce hospitalizations. Women with CF more easily conceive and bear children. Gene therapies hold increasing promise. During your involvement with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the foundation created diagnostic and treatment centers that helped researchers determine the incidence of CF. Working with elected officials, you led a door-to-door campaign, pre-internet, to win state aid for inpatient and outpatient care. Later, you helped establish the first college scholarships for those with CF. For these efforts, you've been named Delta Phi Epsilon Woman of the Year, accepted a certificate of appreciation from the City of New York, and received the Volunteer Spirit of American Award from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. But you've never rested on those laurels. Having modeled engaged citizenship, you established TC's Phyllis L. Kossoff Lecture on Education and Policy, which has hosted a US Secretary of Education, a New York State Education Commissioner, 2 New York City schools chancellors, and education advisors of several presidential candidates. You also maintain lectures at Hunter College and Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital, and scholarships at TC, Hunter, and Baruch. Phyllis L. Kossoff, you've sometimes wondered, looking back, how you accomplished so much. To anyone who knows you, that is no mystery. Today, in accordance with our academic festival, we celebrate you for making a world of difference and proudly present you with the Teachers College President's Medal of Excellence.
Thank you so much. I am extraordinarily privileged to be recognized this morning. It's been a long journey. As I look up to the balcony and I see some of the faces of the newly admitted students, I am reminded of a time that seems to me not so very long ago, when as a young woman of 22 years of age, I received my degree from Teachers College. Married and working in the New York City school system on a junior high school license, Common Branch in East Harlem, I found the experience rewarding but exhausting. I would have continued in education, however, I believe. But when our daughter was born, our firstborn, beset by wheezing and coughing, and failure to thrive, she was diagnosed with a relatively unknown genetic disorder, we were told, with a life expectancy of 3 to 5 years. Trying to cope with this traumatic revelation, we made contact with a few other CF families in the New York area. And after much discussion and many meetings, we formulated the framework that was to become the National Cystic Fibrosis Research Foundation. Armed only with youth and a fierce determination, we set out to save our young. In those early years, CF was not a paragraph nor a line in any medical text, and our first priority was education of the medical profession. At a time long before the internet and the cell phone, when no was the beginning of a conversation, we worked feverishly trying to raise public awareness and establish a climate for giving and caring. In 1957, I stood before the 40th anniversary of my undergraduate sorority, the Delta Phi Epsilon, and I asked my sisters for help. DPhi responded by adopting cystic fibrosis as its national philanthropy. That sorority, with 106 chapter units throughout the country, has fundraised over the past six decades, raising the significant funds to support CF education and research. Recognizing the enormous financial and emotional toll of cystic fibrosis, which, if untreated and undiagnosed, suffocates the lungs and starves the body, I spearheaded a 4-year grassroots effort beginning in 1961, which resulted in the inclusion of cystic fibrosis for New York state aid under the Crippled Children's Service and Title XIX Medicare. And our campaign slogan, which on the outset had been "Time is running out," began to change to "Where there's help, there's hope." Soldiering on then, as president and founder of the New York chapter, national trustee, always with my husband, and a dedicated board of volunteers, we implemented a rigorous program of CF education, research, and care. In the early 1960s and 70s, volunteer units proliferated throughout the country. CF diagnostic and treatment centers were established, and we began to say, give the breath of life, but not in time for many. In her freshman year at Barnard, our daughter lost her battle with cystic fibrosis. Scant solace that at 19 she had outlived the median life expectancy of 10 to 12 years. Devastated by this loss, I cut back my work. But after a few years, motivated by what I perceived as my unfulfilled mission, and driven by the relentless imperative to validate my daughter's legacy, I once again assumed position of leadership as president of the newly constituted CF Association of Greater New York, with an accomplished board and an outstanding medical advisory council for research peer grant review. The CF population was beginning to become of age, and in 1987, we instituted the very first Cystic Fibrosis Career Awards scholarship program for CF young adults. The program was met with great enthusiasm and quickly became the prototype for like endeavors throughout the country. Pursuing an agenda of care, research, and education. In the year 2004, with life expectancy now having reached 30 years of age, and the control for CF almost visible on the horizon, I retired. We had established, however, a lectureship at the Babies Hospital Columbia Presbyterian when my daughter had passed on in her memory. That prestigious lecture, now in its 38th year, has chronicled the advances of CF research and life survival from 3 to 5 years to 40 years today, with a projection of the CF Foundation that within this next decade, cystic fibrosis may become a manageable disease for many. Wanting then to commemorate the life of my late husband, I reached out to Baruch College, where he is trustee emeritus, and the highly anticipated Burton Kossoff Business Leadership Lecture is now there in its second decade. Turning then to my own alma mater, where the Roosevelt House Public Policy Institute at Hunter College was just in its infancy. In addition to establishing a Roosevelt House Honors Scholars Program, I was excited to inaugurate there a pioneering lecture. That annual forum brings leaders in public life for conversation and discussion on pressing issues of domestic and international concern. But it is here at Teachers College that my passion for education was rekindled, believing always in that well-worn phrase, education is the engine that drives civilization. I had been supportive of the college through the years. Increasing my participation now as member of the Dewey Circle, Grace Dodge Society, engaging actively in the Alumni Council since 2001, member of the President's Advisory Council. I've had the pleasure of welcoming 13 of my scholarship recipients at the Department of Human Development. After some years of attending many panel discussions, seminars, symposia, wanting to do something more fully, I had conversation with several of the faculty and focused on the policy, that element, I believe, essential to the implementation of cutting-edge research and education initiative. Presenting their views on campus, the Phyllis L. Kossoff Lecture on Education and Policy has welcomed such education giants as Arne Duncan and Merryl Tisch, Chancellors Dennis Walcott and Carmen Fariña, Chris Stanley Jr., State Commissioner of Health Merryl and Elia. TC has generously characterized the Kossoff Lecture as helping to establish Teachers College as a premier address for the national conversation on education. Asked recently of what accomplishment I was most proud, I replied something to the effect that pride is no factor in this equation. I am gratified if my efforts are judged meaningful. But I do have pride in accomplishment, and I take a moment to point lovingly to my ever-supportive family, my extraordinary son and daughter-in-law, my 4 handsome and accomplished grandsons, a new great-granddaughter at home with her mother, a devoted nephew and his lovely lady friend, and always with me, the beautiful spirit of my daughter, Stephanie Lynn. Steffi loved the words of Emily Dickinson, who wrote, "Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and sings a tune without the words and never stops at all." This morning, here at Teachers College, Columbia, I am again overwhelmingly privileged to be recognized. And I am honored to stand here before you because I know that many of you have achieved mightily and will have achieved in your own field of endeavor, translating hope into that monumental effort, making our society, our world, a better place for your being. And if I may be counted too amongst you, I am proud. Thank you. I don't believe you, but I applaud you because I have the utmost respect for you and for Teachers College. I thank you so very much.